Hey everybody, welcome back to the Inner Revolution. I'm your host, Enoch. I'm a marriage and family therapist intern who's specializing in addiction. And today we're talking about something that's at the core of almost every recovery journey, what it actually takes to overcome pornography addiction. But before we do, I want to give a big thank you to today's sponsor, Enoch Counseling and Wellness. Enoch is a therapy clinic that specializes in sex addiction, betrayal trauma, self-worth, and they also do lie detection. They can also help you work through things like depression, anxiety, ADHD, and so much more. So if you are someone who's feeling like you aren't enough, or you can't seem to work through your depression or anxiety, you can reach out through the link down below, or you can even send a text message to the number right below the link, and we'll get you taken care of. I want to start today with a sentence that is simple. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And this line matters because pornography addiction doesn't just magically disappear because you want it gone, right? It doesn't vanish after you have a bad night, or you feel guilty, or you make a promise to yourself. Change is something that you become. It's not something that you actually wish for. So today we're actually going to break that down to see what that actually means in real life and what needs to change, how to change, why it's so challenging, and most importantly, how to become the kind of person who's capable of leaving porn behind for good. So let's dive in. All right, I want you to imagine something. Imagine you're trying to get in shape, but you keep the same diet, same sleep patterns, same workouts or lack of workouts, and then you just get frustrated that nothing's happening. We would never expect results without change in any other area of life. Yet for some reason with porn addiction, people often believe that they can keep their same lifestyle, their same coping strategies, their same nightly patterns, and somehow something will magically be different. It'll magically go away. But this version of yourself that struggles with porn is not the same version of yourself that is actually going to overcome pornography. And that's the truth that most people don't want to face. You don't get to keep everything about your life the same and expect a new outcome, because porn isn't something that happens. It's something that has been woven into your identity, your habits, your comfort zones, your stress responses, and your overall emotional regulation patterns, especially if this is something that you've been dealing with for over a decade. So the change isn't just stop watching porn. The real change is literally becoming a different person. A person who shows up differently in their day, manages their emotions differently, structures their time differently, handles loneliness differently, responds to stress differently, and thinks about themselves differently. Changing your behavior without changing who you are inside doesn't work. At least it's not going to be lasting change. That's why so many people relapse. I mean, they tried to watch porn without changing the parts of themselves that were actually dependent on it. But the good news is that if nothing changes, nothing changes. But when something changes, everything starts to change. So let's talk about one of the most practical and overlooked pieces of recovery. Your schedule absolutely has to change. Most people don't want to hear this because it means disrupting comfort, but your schedule, the way you move through the day, the way you actually live your life, is one of the biggest predictors of relapse or success. Think about your most common moments of acting out, when you PMO the most. Remember, porn, masturbation, orgasm. These are times that are late at night, when you're bored, when you're tired, when you're home alone after a long, stressful day, when you're lonely, when you're avoiding responsibilities, when you're overstimulated and you're just trying to numb out, right? These moments are all so predictable. Your schedule creates space for these moments to actually happen, or it creates structure that protects you from all of these. Porn addiction lives in things like unstructured time, empty hours, isolation, late nights, mindless scrolling, gaps in the day with no purpose. So if you want to change the outcome, you have to change the environment where the outcome actually happens, right? This means things like earlier bedtimes, no phones in bed, adding exercise in the morning to regulate your body, planning where you'll be after work instead of just drifting and mindlessly going throughout your afternoon, scheduling things like social connection, creating evening routines that don't just involve screens all night. Don't be death scrolling all night. It's just a recipe for disaster, and you know that. You can't be being busy, or you want to fill the time with being busy with meaningful things instead of reactive things. Have a purpose, live with intention. And I know we've talked about that a bit before on some past episodes. It's so overrated, underrated. Okay, it's so underrated. Just this idea of living with intention. Now that doesn't mean that you can never relax, right? You can actually, in fact, relax with intention. Isn't that neat? One guy in recovery described it perfectly. He said, "I didn't quit porn until I quit my old lifestyle." Now, he didn't mean that he moved to a mountain and became a monk, right? He meant that he stopped waking up whenever he wanted, staying up late scrolling, having long empty evenings, and treating his schedule like a suggestion instead of a commitment, or instead of lack of intention. Sorry if you can hear this chair squeak. It's kind of squeaky. But your schedule is not just a calendar. It's a statement of who you're becoming. Wake up each morning when your feet hit the floor, have intention. What do you want to do that day? Who are you trying to become? You have a full day, so fill it with something meaningful. The person you want to be is disciplined. The person who stays addicted is unstructured, has no meaning in their day-to-day. Two different identities, two different outcomes. Now let's talk about something most people misunderstand. Porn isn't really the problem, right? I think we know this. It's the symptom, okay? But porn is also the solution you've been using for the real problem. And that real problem is often things like stress, being overwhelmed, loneliness, emotional numbness, boredom, lack of purpose, self-hatred, exhaustion, lack of connection, anxiety, shame, trauma, you name it. If you take away porn, but don't take care of the underlying emotional needs, your mind is still going to look for some type of relief. Your body is still going to crave an escape. Your nervous system will still look for the fastest way to calm down. And porn is always the shortest shortcut. Porn is the best thing that this world's ever seen as far as what it does to get a super hit, super dopamine spike in the easiest way possible. That doesn't mean it's helpful. That doesn't mean it's healthy, right? But it's insanely good at what it does, which is in fact the problem. So recovery requires learning a few ways of taking care of yourself. A version of self-care that isn't just passive or shallow, but real and scientific even. This means things like sleep. Do you know sleep deprivation increases impulsivity and decreases your ability to actually resist cravings? Research shows up to 60% increase in compulsive behaviors when someone is chronically tired. So the more tired you are, the harder time you're going to have to actually resist or have willpower to actually work through things like urges. Another thing is movement. Exercise lowers stress hormones and stabilizes your mood in ways similar to antidepressants. It gives your body the regulation porn used to provide. You can also look at nutrition. Blood sugar crashes increase cravings. Your brain wants a dopamine hit. Bless its pink squishy little heart, right? Eating like a grown adult actually reduces compulsive impulses. There you go. Or another thing, like connection. Humans are wired for attachment. When connection is missing, we look for artificial intimacy. You also have things like rest and downtime. Not this numbing kind, not doom scrolling, but the restorative kind. Time that actually helps you recover from life. Then you have meaning, working towards something, like your values, right? We've talked a ton about values on this show. But having goals, doing things you're good at, these replace the emptiness that porn inevitably wants to try and fill. You can't just punish yourself into recovery. You can't shame yourself into recovery. And you can't hate yourself into the person you want to be. You have to actually care for yourself deeply, intentionally, and consistently. Because a regulated, connected, cared for version of you doesn't need porn. I next want to talk about this idea that you have to change how you show up in your relationships. People often ask, but why do I need accountability? Why can't I just do this alone? I don't have to tell anybody. And the answer is simple. You become addicted in secrecy, and your recovery is connection. Things like isolation feed addiction. Shame feeds addiction. Secrecy feeds addiction. And the moment you bring your struggle out of the dark and into connection with other people, something powerful happens. Shame loses its grip. So let's talk about real relationship changes you'll actually need to make. First, you'll need to be more honest than is actually comfortable. Not dramatic confessions, right? You don't have to go on telling everybody that you have been struggling with porn for the past 20 years. You don't have to go out about doing that. But saying things like, oh man, I'm really struggling today. Or I need support. Or I'm overwhelmed. Or I'm feeling the urge right now. I'm feeling really tempted. People can support the version of you they actually know. Now, I had a client say, well, I don't want to tell people because I don't want to put that burden on them. When someone came up to you in the past and has said they were struggling with something or they needed help with something, what was your immediate response? You say, you burden placer. Shame on you. I really doubt that. At least I hope. You were probably super thankful that they felt like they could trust you to come up to you and say something like that. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to just go tell everybody, right? But we found that the more people that know, generally in your circle of support, the better. Number two, you'll need mentors, peers, or even a therapist. This isn't because you're weak and you can't do it alone, but because humans change in relationships. We regulate better with people. We push ourselves harder with people. We heal faster with people. We are social creatures, and that's just something that you're going to have to embrace when it comes to recovery. Third is you're going to have to repair trust. If you're in a relationship, porn often impacts that dynamic. And healing that is going to require some patience, humility, and consistency. Fourth, you'll need boundaries. This might mean no late night phone use, no being alone for hours without a plan, no secrecy around technology, or nor hiding emotions. All right? Boundaries aren't punishments. They are scaffolding while you learn to rebuild. Number 5, you'll need to show up differently in your relationships. You'll need to show up more engaged, more present, more honest, more connected. Porn promises all this intimacy without vulnerability. Real connection requires vulnerability without shortcuts. You can't shortcut things like connection. And that's where the real healing begins. Now, this doesn't just take a month, 2 months, 3 months, a year. You're going to have to show up every single day. And this is where people get discouraged because they think, do I have to work on this every day? Can I not take a day off? And the answer is not in a stressful way, but yes, in a consistent identity building way. Because what you do daily is going to shape who you become permanently. Now, does that mean if you skip one of your dailies one day that everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket and you're done and you're never going to recover? No, it doesn't mean that. We're looking for consistency, not perfection. The brain changes through repetition. Neurons that fire together, wire together, right? You create your future through these tiny little choices, like 5 minutes of journaling when you're stressed, going to bed on time, calling a friend instead of acting out, going for a walk when your body feels overwhelmed, bringing awareness to the triggers that you might be having, choosing a healthy activity, rebuilding trust through consistency. These are not just small things, right? These are building blocks of freedom. And yes, it's going to be hard. You're going to have days where you want to stay up late and party or doom scroll on your phone, what have you, right? And you're going to have to learn to say no to your brain, to that dictator within, to your old Johnny up there in the brain. You're going to have to say no. And you're going to have to do what you know you need to do anyway. That's not always fun. In fact, most of the time, that will not be fun. But it's necessary for change. Some days you're going to feel unstoppable, right? Like, man, nothing can get in my way. I had 10 urges today. Not even a sweat was broken. Not even a bead of sweat. Easy. But other days you're going to feel like a complete failure. You're going to battle urges. You're going to face emptiness. You're going to pull on old habits. You will question whether you can change, and you'll think, why is this so damn hard? But let me tell you the truth. Every man in recovery eventually learns, or woman if that's something you struggle with, which is totally fine and normal, it's okay. The struggle is not evidence that you're failing. The struggle is evidence that you're actually changing. The old you didn't struggle with these things, right? You just gave in. Yeah, I have an urge, no problem. I want to doom scroll, no problem. I don't want to go to the gym, not for me. This new you is fighting, and that's what growth feels like. Now let's talk about sacrifice. Real transformation always costs something. Not because you're being punished, right? But because you're upgrading your life. You're literally changing. To reach this next version of yourself, you must let go of the version that's holding you back. You have to. You may have to give up things like sleeping with your phone next to you, staying up late, unfiltered internet access, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, certain songs or movies, old fantasies, being online when you're lonely, being alone without structure, doom scrolling, the comfort of not trying, and the idea that you can do this alone. And at first, these will feel like losses, right? It's going to suck. But eventually, it's going to feel like freedom. And every time you let go of something that feeds your addiction, you gain something that feeds into your future, into the person that you're trying to become, into the person that you will become. Someone in recovery once told me, I didn't lose anything. I just stopped holding on to things that were killing me. And that's what growth feels like. Really hard at first, but it gets easier as you keep going. Of course, you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs in the future. Even when you get to this point where you wanted to be, you're still going to have hard times. That's just a part of growth. That's a part of life. There's no getting around that. So let's bring this all together. Recovery is not just about quitting porn. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need it anymore. And that person has a structured life, cares for himself or herself, has support, is honest, knows how to regulate his emotions, looks at their triggers with curiosity and not shame, shows up in relationships, builds habits that align with their values, sets boundaries that protect their heart, takes steps every day, and is willing to grow even when it's difficult. You're not just quitting something. You are becoming someone. You are becoming this person that you've always dreamed of. You're becoming more grounded, more connected, more disciplined, more emotionally aware, more confident, more capable, more resilient, and more fully alive. And that version of you isn't just a fantasy. It's not a someday version of yourself, right? He's built through the choices that you make today, that you make right now. So the fact you're listening to this episode is a choice that your future self will thank you for. This is something that aligns with becoming who you want, which is putting pornography behind you and stepping into who you actually are. Now remember, you don't have to change overnight. You just have to take one step in the direction of your future self each and every day. It's consistency. Because nothing changes if nothing changes. But everything changes when you do. So if today's episode spoke to you, I want you to do one thing. Choose one habit, one boundary, one change that you're going to make this week. Not 10, not 50, just one. Because one change leads to another. And that is how revolutions start. Small, powerful, consistent steps. Thanks for listening to The Inner Revolution. Share this with someone who's also trying to grow. And remember, freedom is possible, but it requires action. See you guys in the next one.